So here we are going through the practice problems for lesson 19, and we're talking about expanding and factoring. Of course, that's part of the distributive property. So the first thing we're given to do is to expand this particular expression to write it into an equivalent expression. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually rewrite it. So it's negative 1/4 times the quantity of negative x plus 12y. Now remember, the distributive property, when we send it in other words, expanding, we get to, have fun. Woo! Woo! Remember, there's always a woo for everything on the inside of the parentheses. So that means we've got negative 1/4 times negative 8x plus negative 1/4 times 12y. So remember, that's how we expanded it, because we sent everything onto the inside, distributed it, so everybody's happy. Now we have to actually multiply. So negative 1/4 times negative 8, that would be over 1. So a negative times a negative I know is a positive. That would be 8 over 4. Whoops. Let me fix that. Eight. Oh my goodness. This stylus is not cooperating tonight. Okay, that would be positive 8 over 4x. Bring down the plus. And then negative 1/4 times 12y. Let's put this over 1. Negative times a positive, of course, is a negative. That would be 12 over 4y. And now, of course, we need to reduce these, because both sides, we have that tiny little 4 holding up those big giant numbers. So that's going to equal, well, I've got 8/4. 8 divided by 4, of course, is 2x plus, we know it's a negative. I'm going to put it in parentheses so it's not too weird to look at. Negative 12 divided by 4, of course, is 3y. Next, we get to factor to write an equivalent expression. So I'm going to rewrite it again. So it's 36a minus 16. So the first thing I need to do is figure out the biggest gazinta. So I know that they're both even, so of course 2 goes into them, but it's certainly not the biggest gazinta. The biggest gazinta is going to be 4. I can divide both sides by 4. And if that's what I'm dividing by, I know that my final answer is going to have 4 on the outside of the parentheses. Okay? So I got 36a divided by 4. I know that 36 divided by 4 is 9a minus 16 divided by 4 is 4. So this, what I just factored out, is going to go on the inside of the parentheses, 9a minus 4. So remember, the biggest gazinta is on the outside, and once I've divided, everything else is on the inside. So this is my final answer. Next. Lynn missed math class. Oh my goodness, Lynn must have been so sad. So sad. So sad to miss math class. Oh my goodness. I can't even imagine how sad Lynn is. Look at the tears coming down her face. Crying. Oh, poor Lynn. Oh. Okay. Anyway, Lynn missed math class on the day they worked on expanding and factoring, and even Saturday to miss, Saturday to miss class. Well, Karen, what a good friend, is helping Lynn to catch up. Lynn understands that expanding is using the distributive property, okay? And that was when we get to woo, right? but she doesn't understand what factoring is or why it works. How can Kieran explain factoring to Lynn? Well, just like in that last problem that we did, remember the factoring was when we found the biggest gazinta. So I like to think about factoring is like the distributive property in reverse. Factoring means the distributive property in reverse. And remember, that means that we find the GCF, or the biggest gazinta, and divide. Because remember, when we distribute, we get to multiply. So that's why it's in reverse, or the opposite. So anything similar to that would, of course, be the answer. Next, okay, we're still, feeling sorry for Lynn because she missed math class. Okay, now Lynn asks Kieran how the diagrams with boxes help with factoring. What should Kieran tell Lynn about the boxes? Okay, so let's look at the boxes. We know that we've got a large rectangle, right, on the inside, and then we've got some number on the outside and two. Oh, wait a second, that's when we do the distributive property. Sorry, let me back up. So we've got two numbers on the inside. So I'm actually going to represent these with variables. For instance, xy and xz. Okay, how do the diagrams help with factoring? So out here, we look for the biggest gazinta. Remember, that's the GCF. That's what the greatest common factor, that's what the fancy math terms are. But we like to use the biggest gazinta because we always know it's what is the biggest number, that gazinta, xy, and xz. So in this particular case, because I made it variables, we can see that the thing that they share that's the same is going to be that x, right? So x is on the outside, right? And then we divide. Up here, we're going to divide. So I should probably even number these, right? Don't you think that'll be helpful? So this, of course, is 1, and this is 2. So then I divide xy. Let's just make sure we understand this. Xy divided by x means those cancel, and I'm left with y. Right? So that's my first division. And then my second one, I'm going to have xz divided by x. Again, those x's cancel, and I'm left with z. It's positive. I'm going to put that positive in the middle. So those diagrams help by showing us what to pull out of the boxes. Again, if you're wondering if you have a correct answer for this, feel free to come see me while I'm here. Finally, Lynn asks Kieran to help factor the expression negative 4xy minus 12xz plus 20xw. How can Kieran use this example to Lynn understand factoring? Well, that's really funny. Should be to help Lynn, obviously. Anyway, that's a typo from the book, not Mrs. De Silva. Anyway, so let's take a look at this. We've got negative 4xy minus 12xz plus 20xw. So, first thing we're going to look at is those numbers. What's the biggest gazinta they share? The biggest number that goes into 4, 12, and 20. Well, hopefully it didn't take you too long to figure out that the largest gazinta is 4. So that is what's going to be on the outside of our parentheses. And I'm going to use that 4 to divide. Wait, is there anything else? I need to slow down here. Is there anything in the variables that they all share? Well, I think I see an x, and an x. So similar to that example I just gave you in the last one where I used the variables. So it's not going to be just the variable, though. It's going to be 4x. If I lost you, rewind. If you need to ask questions, please do so. So now each one of these, just like remember when I distribute and I go in and go woo on the inside, and this way I'm taking them out, right? Divide everything by the 4x. That's why the 4x is on the outside of the parentheses. So now, negative 4 divided by 4, of course, that is going to be equal to negative 1, but I just need to write the negative. Remember, 1 is a ninja 1. xy divided by y, the x's are going to cancel and leave me with y. Minus, just bring down that minus sign. 12 divided by 4, of course, is 3. See, I'm just using the variables with the variables and the numbers with the numbers. You can't try to divide x divided by 4. It makes no sense. So that's why it's 12 divided by 4, which is 3. xz divided by x, they cancel. Remember, they canceled over here. They're going to cancel here. I'm left with z plus 20 divided by 4, of course, is 5. These x's cancel, and I'm left with w. So here is my answer. Next, complete the equation with the numbers that make the expression on the right side of the equal sign equivalent to the expression on the left side. Okay. Oh, so we're just, again, looking for the biggest gazinta. That's all they're asking for. So what is the biggest number that goes into 75, 75A and 25B? Well, hopefully, I mean, I find it's often easy to use money, of course. You should know that 25 goes into 75 and 25. So I'm going to put 25, that's what's on the outside. And then if I divide both of these by 25, I know those two are going to cancel. That's why that B is by itself. 75A divided by 25. Well, 75 divided by 25 is 3. And the A is very conveniently already written there for me. So there we go. Next. Okay, so admittedly, some of these problems are going to take us a little bit longer than originally expected. So I am probably going to have to go on to another page, but that's no big deal because I know that you can follow along. So let's take this first one here, A. So I got negative 1/8 D minus 4 equals negative 3/8. Now, I am going to be using different colors here. However, if you don't have extra colors, I would suggest that you rewrite it again, just so you can see each step separately. But my next step, I can see that I've got a couple of denominators, meaning numbers on the bottom. And I know most of you don't love fractions, even though fractions are our friends. We want to get rid of the fractions to make these numbers easier to deal with. So we also want to think about this as dividing by 8, right? The opposite of dividing by 8 is multiplying by 8. So for each of these, I'm going to multiply wee. Remember, though, I know you're looking at that and saying, Mrs. De Silva, you ignored that there's an equal sign here. Nope, if we multiply every single thing on the inside by that number on the outside, we are going to be just fine. So, negative 8 times negative 1/8. Well, hopefully you'll see that, if I put that over 1, those 8s are going to cancel each other out, or in other words, 8 over 8. That's going to leave me with negative 1, or just negative. But I can put the 1 there if you want. Actually, you know what? I'm going to write that using my highlighter so you can kind of see it, but it's kind of ninja-like. Because remember, those ninja 1s, they're everywhere. Dun dun dun. Okay, negative D. Okay, now remember 8 came into the 4. Well, first I have to take my minus, right? Bring that right down. 8 times 4 is 32. equals 8 times negative 3/8. Just remember that 8 is over 1. Again, I can make those 8's cancel out. That's why I chose 8. So it would equal negative 3. Hopefully everybody's with me. So now this is far easier to deal with because I can simply say, what is the opposite of minus 32? It is, of course, plus 32. Plus 32. These two cancel. I'm left with negative d equals negative 3 plus 32. So it means I owe $3. I get 32. That leaves me with 29. Now this right now says the opposite of d, so therefore d is going to be the opposite of 29, which is negative 29. So for that first one, that's what we have. Now I am going to add a new page for letter B, or variable B. Whoopsie! So for the next one, it's negative 1/4 m plus 5 equals 16. Now, you can leave that fraction there and deal with it if you'd like, but I know most of you fear the fraction, even though fractions are our friends. I'm going to keep reminding you of that. So how do I get rid of that 4 on the bottom? What's the opposite of dividing by 4? Well, multiplying by 4, of course. So I'm going to go wee, woo, woo, and I get to send all of them on the inside. And I know that that's going to be 4 times negative 1/4 m plus 4 times 5 plus, whoopsie, it's not plus, it's equals, come now, Mrs. De Silva, equals 4 times 16, right? So these are going to cancel. I'm going to be left with negative 1, but it's negative m plus 20 equals 4 times 16. Mrs. De Silva, I need a calculator. No, you don't. What's 4 times 10? That, of course, would be 40. And 4 times 6 is 24. 40 plus 24 is, of course, 64. That was easy. Okay, now, what is the opposite of plus 20? I know you know it's minus 20. Always do the opposite. That's the magic question. These cancel. Negative m equals 64 minus 20, of course, is 44. That negative is telling us the opposite of m is 44. So therefore, the opposite of, we want to find the opposite of both, so therefore m equals negative 44. Oh, this is fun. Okay, next. Next one, we've got 10b equals negative 45. 10b equals what do I got going on? 10b, sorry, it is not equals, it's plus negative 45. I'm going to put these in parentheses, just make it look nicer. Equals negative 43. Okay then, what's the opposite of plus negative 45? Well, of course, that would be minus negative 45. I've got 45 negatives. I'm taking 45 negatives away. Negative 43 minus negative 45 over here. So that means these are going to cancel. I'm going to be left with 10b equals. I just want to write this out so you can see it a little bit differently. So it's negative 43 minus negative 45. Does it look a little bit better that way? I'm betting it does. So that again means 10b equals, here we go, stay, change, change, cha-cha-cha. Okay, so this is like saying that I spent $43 and then I got $45 from my allowance maybe. So that means 10b is equal to positive 2. And now I know that that number next to a variable means that I am multiplying, and the opposite of multiplication, of course, is division. We're dividing both sides by 10. Those cancel, and b equals 1/5. All right, moving on. Next problem, I've got negative 8 times the quantity of y minus 1.25 equals 4. Now I know some of you are looking at this and you're inclined to immediately go to that distributing the negative 8 into the inside of the parentheses because it's fun to go woo, but we're not going to do that because what we can recognize here is that right now that this number is being multiplied by the entirety of everything inside the parentheses. So knowing that the first thing that I would be expected to do is multiply, I am simply going to divide everything by that negative 8 on both sides. That means these cancel, and I'm left with y minus 1.25 equals negative 4 divided by 8 is going to be negative 1/2. Well, now I have a dilemma, don't I? I've got decimals and fractions in the same problem. I think that's fun. I think it's an opportunity because these are nice, clean, beautiful fractions that are easily changed into decimals. Why decimals, Mrs. De Silva? Well, because they started with decimals, and it's rude to change decimals into fractions or fractions into decimals without permission. So I'm going to change that fraction into a decimal. So I'm going to end up with y minus 1.25 equals negative 1/2. Well, negative 1/2 in its decimal form would be 0.5, or if it makes you feel better to put the 0 at the end because now it really looks like money. How's that? Oh, this is wonderful, Mrs. De Silva. I know. Okay, so now we get to say what's the opposite of minus 1.25? It is, of course, plus 1.25 on both sides. On this side they cancel, y equals. Now be careful here because the signs are different. Find the difference. But think about it. If I like to look at these like money, I know you all understand money. So negative 50 cents plus $1.25. So I'm down 50 cents and I add $1.25 to it. That means I'm now going to be up 75 cents or 0.075. The larger absolute value is, of course, 0 is terrible. Okay, it's better now. The larger absolute value, of course, is the 1.25. So that means my 0.75 is going to remain positive. And there is my answer. Problem 3.2 times the quantity of S plus 10 equals 32. So just like that last one, we're going to take advantage of the fact that this 3.2, I know you're going, but I get to woo, woo, woo. I know you get to woo, but then it's going to be a harder problem. So why would you do that? What we want to do instead is divide everything by this number that's on the outside of the parentheses. So that means I divide this side by 3.2 and this side by 3.2. Oh, Mrs. De Silva, that looks hard. No, it's going to be fine. These cancel. I'm left with S plus 10 equals 32 divided by 3.2. Okay, now I'm going to leave this division right the way it is, but we need to remember we can't divide by that decimal on the bottom. So that means I need to move my decimal. How many times did I move it to get it to the end? I moved it once, so therefore I'm going to move this top number one time as well, therefore giving me a placeholder. So that means, just to make sure that we understand what that means that it's 320 divided by 32. 320 divided by 32. Well, hopefully you realize that that's going to be 10, because 10 times 32, of course, is 320. So that means I'm going to have S plus 10 equals 10. Still don't have S by itself. I need to do the opposite of plus 10, which of course is minus 10. Minus 10 on both sides. These cancel. I'm left with S equals 10 minus 10, of course, is 0. Mrs. De Silva, can S equal 0? Of course it can. So there is your answer. Well, that was fun. See you next time.